Thank you. The gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Flood, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The past several months have put the debate over energy into perspective. Russia's invasion of Ukraine was a global energy supply shock. That shock has underscored the importance of reliable and affordable energy. Europe has long been too dependent on Russian oil and gas, while countries like Germany have aggressively pursued renewables. They still depended on fossil fuels from Russia to keep their economy running. Now that their fossil fuel source is restricted, those countries are now struggling to power their economies. Germany has mandated a ban on illuminated advertisements and new nationwide temperature requirements in public buildings to save fuel. The French president is calling on his countrymen to reduce energy consumption by 10% over the coming weeks. If people can't hit that energy reduction goal on their own, the government will start enforcing mandatory energy cuts. Lest we forget, winter is coming. Our friends in Europe are sadly going to see a bigger energy crunch when temperatures drop. I think we need to take this news from Europe as a cautionary tale. Every economy is dependent on energy. We are fortunate in the United States because we have plenty of reliable sources of energy within our boundaries, and I do support a mix of these energy sources. But I have a question for Mr. Schellenberger. Can you talk about the massive renewable energy incentives included in President Biden's latest IRA bill? Do you think these incentives will meaningfully increase U.S. energy production overall?
Thank you for the question, sir. And before I answer, let me just add one thing to that, which is that the Biden administration and the IRA are basically pursuing the same strategy that Europe pursued, which is shutting down domestic natural gas production and increasing reliance on weather-dependent renewables. That's why Europe got itself into the trouble it got into. And what's happening here risks repeating that error, despite the fact that we can all see the disastrous consequences of it. I think there's issues of with renewables, what you get are two problems. One is that you don't have the power you need, which is why California, despite having deployed so much solar panels, ran out of energy when we needed it over the last couple of weeks when we were near blackouts, but also produces too much electricity when you don't need it, which is why California has to pay Arizona to take our excess power from us during periods of low energy demand and high solar output. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question or not, sir, but I think what you need is, for electricity to work well, you need to match supply and demand at any given moment. Anytime you take energy out of the electrical grid and bring it back on, you're paying an energy penalty of somewhere between 20 and 40%, which increases costs. So any additional unreliability added into electricity increases the number of people and machinery required to deliver electricity and therefore increase costs.
Real briefly, and I don't have a lot of time, but I know that you are a proponent of nuclear energy. And I want to ask you, what role do you think nuclear energy plays in this? And also, could you briefly touch on nuclear microreactors? I'm interested to know what you think.
Sure. And let me say, too, on nuclear, what's important to remember is that if we aren't helping our allies and other nations around the world to build nuclear power plants, Russia and China will. And because it is a dual-use technology, we've always recognized what it is. We've always had a policy in the United States government to be involved in nuclear power plant construction abroad. Well, we're not getting those contracts with nations abroad to build nuclear power plants because we're not building nuclear power plants at home. We need a strategy to build nuclear at home so we have the workforce that's capable then of building plants abroad. That's what Korea, Japan, and France have all been involved with. We've got to get back in the nuclear game. We've seen that Saudi Arabia has been working with the Chinese to both do uranium extraction from seawater, uranium enrichment, and build nuclear power plants. I think most people on both sides of the aisle in the Congress recognize the threat that is to national security.
Microreactors, talk about that.
We have microreactors today. They're in submarines and aircraft carriers. They have a near flawless record of operation. The Russians are now using them for icebreakers. I think they're important, but I think we have to just keep in mind that the basic physics of energy continue to apply. Larger reactors require fewer workers and costs per unit of energy, and so they produce the cheapest form of power. So in general, if you're going to significantly expand nuclear, the main event remains large light water reactors.
Thank you, Mr. Schellenberger. What I'd like to say is we need a well-balanced approach to energy. Renewables can and should be a part of that approach, but this administration, in my opinion, seems intent to pursue a path forward with only renewables, and I do not think that's sustainable. And I think if we want to see what the future is for America, watch Europe. Watch what happens this winter. It's dangerous, and it's dangerous for Europe, and it will be dangerous and is dangerous for America. Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back.
Thank you.